Good morning. It is Wednesday, April 8th, and I'm here today for your American history review of the post-World War II through Great Society. In a normal classroom, I'd obviously have you answer the questions and go around the room, but today I'm just going to be reading the answers to you. I'll read the question and give you the answer. Our question of the day is, who made unsupported claims of communism on individuals? Who was that person? That happened during the Red Scare, right after World War II, as we were moving through the Cold War. So that would be who made unsupported claims of communism on individuals. All right. So I'm just going to get started here. I'll read the question, then I'll give you the answer. The beauty of this is that if you don't get the entire answer, all you got to do is back it up a little bit. If you're not watching this live, or go back to it, I'll put the link on the Teams app, and you can go back and make sure you get the correct answers. Okay. So number one, who was the communist leader in China during the Chinese Civil War in the 1940s? And that was Mao Zedong. Mao Zedong. Okay. Number two, what was the military alliance among Western European countries and the United States that would defend against military aggression and the spread of communism? The answer to number two is NATO. NATO. Number three, who took over the USSR after the death of Joseph Stalin? And that would be Nikita Khrushchev. Who took over the USSR after the death of Joseph Stalin? Nikita Khrushchev. Number four, what was the world political organization created to establish peace and prevent another world war? That would be the United Nations. Number five, who made unsupported claims of communism on individuals? Joseph McCarthy. Joseph McCarthy, the answer to number five. Number six, who was president when the Cold War began during the Berlin Airlift? Harry Truman was still president. Number seven, what was the period of fear in the U.S. that communism was taking control of the country called? That was the Red Scare. That was what was the period of fear in the U.S. that communism was taking control of the country called? That was the Red Scare. Number eight, what were the generation of Americans who were born between 1945 and 1961 called? I think it was 1964. That was probably a typo, but they were called baby boomers. So what were the generation of Americans who were born between 1945 and 1964 called? The baby boomers. Okay. Number nine, what was the period of tension between the United States and the Soviet Union over who would have the most political and economic dominance around the world called? And that was the Cold War. Okay. That was a struggle of economic and political dominance around the world, and that was the Cold War. Number 10, what was the military alliance of communist nations called? That was the Warsaw Pact. The military alliance of communist nations was called the Warsaw Pact. Number 11, what was the policy of the U.S. to prevent the spread of communism worldwide called? And that was called the Truman Doctrine. Okay, the Truman Doctrine. Number 12, who was the nationalist leader in China during the Chinese Civil War? That was Chiang Kai-shek. Chiang Kai-shek was the nationalist leader in China during the Chinese Civil War. 13, what was the movement called where Americans in the 1950s did not believe in conforming to society's standards and attempted to live unconventional lives of the nonconformity called? That was the Beat movement. Okay. Number 13, what was the movement called where Americans in the 1950s did not believe in conforming to society's standards and attempted to live unconventional lives of nonconformity called? That was the Beat movement. Okay. Number 14, who led the communist revolutionary takeover in Cuba in 1959? Fidel Castro. Fidel Castro. Number 15, what was the term for when Americans had more money to spend and more products to buy after World War II? And that was consumerism. Consumerism for number 15. Number 16 has a quote: "From settlement in the Baltic to trustee in the Arctic, an iron curtain has descended across this continent. Behind that line lie all the capitalists of the ancient states of Central and Eastern Europe. All are subject in one form or another not only to Soviet influence, but to very high and increasing measure of control from Moscow." That was Winston Churchill. So in 1946, Winston Churchill believed, what is Winston Churchill's belief is happening in Eastern Europe? And the answer would be communism is spreading and each country is falling under the direct control of the Soviet Union. Okay? So communism is spreading and each country is falling under direct control of the Soviet Union. Number 17, what is the purpose of the HUAC? The HUAC. What is the purpose of HUAC? It investigated people suspected of communist activities in the U.S. and particularly within the U.S. government. Okay? Number 18, how did the Marshall Plan help other countries? Economic assistance was given to countries threatened by communism to build their economies and lessen the appeal of communism. Tried to help them out economically. Number 19, who helped South Korea and North Korea during the Korean War? Well, the U.S. helped South Korea and China helped North Korea during the Korean War. Okay. Number 20, you have a map on number 20. And the question is, what is the primary issue of sending supplies into West Berlin after Germany was divided into 4 zones? The answer is West Berlin is located in the heart of communist East Germany, thus separated from all other democratic and capitalist allies. Okay? West Berlin was located in the heart of communist East Germany, thus separated from all other democratic and capitalist allies. 21. What do the planes represent in the photo? And that would be the crisis known as the Berlin Airlift, when the Soviet Union cut off train and roadways to Allied powers, bringing supplies to the people in West Berlin. Okay. 22. What were 2 aspects that were viewed as rebellious in culture in the 1950s? And that would be rock and roll and the beat movement. So 22 is rock and roll and the beat movement. Okay. 23, you have a political cartoon there. And the question is, how can the Cuban Missile Crisis be described from this photo? And it would be a tense standoff between 2 nuclear superpowers in which each side nearly launched nuclear weapons at the other before cooler heads prevailed. And I'll read that again. A tense standoff between 2 nuclear superpowers in which each side nearly launched nuclear weapons at the other before cooler heads prevailed. Okay, that was 23. 24. What helped end the Cuban Missile Crisis? And it was America's secret promise to remove nuclear weapons from Turkey. America's secret promise to remove nuclear weapons from Turkey. 25. How did the Federal Highway Act help Americans? Decrease the amount of travel time between cities of various towns, provided construction jobs to help build the interstate system, and help the economy grow due to increased business travel. So there's 3 things there. Decrease the amount of travel time between cities and various towns, providing construction jobs to help build interstate system, helping the economy grow to increased business travel. Okay. 26. How did many TV programs portray women in the 1950s? And it was stereotypical housewives happy to stay at home. So it was stereotypical housewives happy to stay at home. Okay. 27. What was the primary purpose for Medicare and Medicaid in LBJ's Great Society program? And that was for health insurance. Okay. 28. What was the primary reason for the Berlin Wall in 1961? And that was to prevent East Germans from fleeing to West Berlin. Okay. That was kind of their way to get out. They'd get into West Berlin, and then they would get on, take transportation to get out of West Berlin into West Germany. 29. Why did the Beat movement attempt to lead unconventional lives in the 1950s? So why did the Beat movement attempt to lead unconventional lives in the 1950s? They believed the culture of the 1950s brought about too much conformity. So they believed the culture of the 1950s brought about too much conformity. Number 30. What role did TV play in the presidential election of the 1960s? Voters gained the ability to choose their candidate based upon appearance rather than experience or substance. So voters gained the ability to choose their candidate based upon appearance rather than experience or substance. Okay. 31. What was not a result of JFKs New Frontier? And you need to know what the results of his program was. Higher taxes for Americans, not more funding for the space program. These are the answers. Expansion of the military, including special forces and the Peace Corps and Alliance for programs. So these were the results. Higher taxes for Americans, not more funding for the space program, expansion of the military, including special forces, the Peace Corps, and the Alliance for programs. Okay. Hopefully that makes sense. I don't have my test sitting here with me, so I can't go back and double check it. 32. Who was involved in the Bay of Pigs? Pro-democratic Cubans attempting to overthrow the communist government of Cuba and restore a democratic government. It was pro-democratic Cubans attempting to overthrow the communist government of Cuba and restore a democratic government. All right. According to the Warren Commission, who acted alone in JFK's assassination? And that was Lee Harvey Oswald. They said he acted alone in the incident. But we'll never know because Jack Rudy shot him before he could be interrogated. But Lee Harvey Oswald. 34, we have another quote. In the name of the greatest people that have ever trod this earth, I draw the line in the dust and toss the gauntlet before the feet of tyranny, and I say, segregation now, segregation tomorrow, segregation forever. And that came from Alabama Governor George Wallace. His 1963 inaugural address. Which Supreme Court case could Wallace be responding to? And that was Brown versus Board of Education in 1954 that overthrew the Plessy versus Ferguson from 1896, which said separate but equal facilities was constitutional. So it was Brown versus Board of Education of 1954 that overthrew Plessy versus Ferguson from 1896, which said separate but equal facilities was constitutional. Okay. What was the purpose of JBL's Great Society? And that was to end poverty and racial injustice in the U.S. To end poverty and racial justice in the U.S. And that's number 35. Okay. 36. Now, a couple of these are really long, but again, for you, you can go back and replay them again and make sure you have the right answer. Okay, 36. Why were Americans scared of the launching of Sputnik? They believed that the Soviets had better rocket technology than the U.S. Americans feared that the Soviets could attach a nuclear missile to a satellite or a rocket and launch it into the U.S. Since the Soviets beat the U.S. to space, the Americans feared that they were behind in multiple other science and technological areas as well. Okay, I'll read that again because it's really long. They believed that the Soviets had better rocket technology than the U.S. Americans feel that Soviets could attach a nuclear missile to a satellite or a rocket and launch it into the U.S. Since the Soviets beat the U.S. to space, Americans feared they were behind in multiple other science and technology areas as well. Okay. 37. How did the GI Bill help Americans? It provided loans at low interest rates for purchasing homes. It provided loans at low interest rates for purchasing homes. Okay. 38, have a quote from JFK. We choose to go to the moon in this decade and to do other things, not because they are easy, but because they are hard. Because that goal will serve to organize and measure the best of our energies and skills. Because the challenge is one that we are willing to accept, one we are unwilling to postpone, and one we intend to win. That was JFK in 1962. What are three reasons JFK challenged the Americans to send a man to the moon? So here they are. He wants to install national pride in Americans to accomplish a difficult task. He wants the U.S. to close the perceived missile gap with the Soviet Union. And he wants to prove to the Soviet Union that the U.S. will not easily back down. So I'll read those again and see if I can't walk all over myself again. He wants to install national pride in Americans to accomplish a difficult task. He wants the U.S. to close the perceived missile gap with the Soviet Union. He wants to prove to the Soviet Union that the U.S. will not back down easy. Okay. 39. According to New Jersey versus TLO in 1985, students on school grounds can be searched under guidelines of reasonable suspicion in order to keep schools safe. Which court case protects their Fourth Amendment right to prevent illegal search and seizure of property off of school grounds? And that would be Mapp versus Ohio of 1961. I know we didn't talk much about those, but then again, we weren't in class during that time, so I couldn't really talk about them much. And number 40, the last one. Which court case prevents the public school system from having a state-mandated prayer given in schools? And that was Engel versus Vitale in 1962. Okay. Now, if you have any problems, if you missed something, there's only a couple of people watching that I saw, so you'll be able to go back and replay it again. I'll put the link in the Teams app if you haven't subscribed, and check for bell notifications. And then you'll be able to watch it a couple times to get all your answers. I will come on tomorrow with a brief message reminding you that the test has been put on the Teams app and that the question of the day is there. You'll need to answer your question of the day and then go ahead and work on your test. I'm going to make it so the tests are not due until Monday. That'll give you plenty of time to take your test with everything else that's going on. But to get them turned in, they'll be due by Monday evening. Now, I'll be back on here tomorrow, but I will not be on Friday or Monday because Friday and Monday is considered a no school day with the Easter week. So go ahead and work on your study guide, get your correct answers, study it over, and then take your test on tomorrow. Have it turned in by Monday. Okay. Going to be a nice day out today. If you're not getting out much, I'd encourage you to get outside, get out in your yard, walk around. Social distancing preferred, so we can get through this thing. And be careful and be safe. And I will be back on here tomorrow. Until then, have a great day.